Most families don't regret moving to Willoughby because of the house. If they struggle, it's usually because of the day-to-day things they didn't expect, like the school routine, the 8:20 a.m. traffic, the parking situation, or just how busy everything feels once everyone's schedules fill up. In this video, I want to talk honestly about what families tend to underestimate before moving to Willoughby and why some families choose to leave after a few years, even if they genuinely like living here. And as we go, I'll give you a few simple, what would this look like for us, exercises so you can test whether Willoughby is likely to be a great chapter for your family. Because here's the thing, what you see on the MLS and what you experience on a random weekday morning are two very different things. Online listings and quick weekend visits don't always show you what daily life actually feels like. You see beautiful photos, nice floor plans, maybe you do a drive-through on a sunny Saturday afternoon. But what you don't see is what 200th Street or 208th Street looks like at 8:10 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday. How long it takes to get out of your complex when 3 schools let out at the same time, where everyone parks, when garages are half storage and every driveway is full, or how much background noise there might be from main roads, construction, or just townhome density. Willoughby has grown incredibly fast. What used to feel like a small pocket of Langley is now the district's main growth hubs, and it's still evolving, but it absolutely shapes the way life feels here once you're past that honeymoon phase. Your experience will feel very different if you're home during the day with toddlers versus if you're commuting during rush hour with 2 kids at different schools. Once you understand the gap between listing photos and daily life, the next question becomes, what specifically catches family off guard? Let's walk through the biggest things families tend to underestimate before they move in. The first one, and honestly the biggest one, is school catchments and grade structure, which I went into much greater detail in my last video. So if you missed it or you want to know more about it, make sure to go back and watch. On the Willoughby slope, we've seen multiple catchment adjustments and new schools announced, including the new Smith Middle and Secondary schools on a joint campus. The district is constantly consulting on boundaries and bell times because there's so many students concentrated here, and they're trying to balance space, traffic, and safety. Here's what that means in real life. You might buy into a certain school pathway, thinking your kids will go from one specific elementary to one middle and then a certain secondary. And a few years later, boundaries shift and start times change. I've spoken with families who bought expecting a short walk to one school, and then a boundary adjustment meant busing across a busier corridor. And then there's the overlapping start time reality. One child starts at 8:30, another at 8:35, different directions. You're sitting in the 208 lineup behind 3 school zones, and suddenly that 5-minute drive is now 25 minutes. Here's a quick exercise you can do. Write down your kids' current ages and then map out where they'd likely go in the next 5 to 10 years. Then ask yourself, if one of these pieces changes, am I flexible or is this a deal breaker? The second thing families tend to underestimate is traffic. And not just traffic in general, but school hour traffic. On a map, everything looks close. You might think to yourself, oh, it's just a 3-minute drive. In real life, that 3-minute drive can turn into 15 or 20 minutes at drop-off because you're sharing the same corridor with multiple schools, dense housing, and commuters. If you're heading south on 200th Street around 8:10 a.m., you're in it with everyone else. Add rain, crosswalks, U-turns, and umbrellas, and it doesn't take much for it to feel jammed. For some families, that's totally manageable. They build a rhythm around it. For others, the daily stress of getting everyone out the door in a tight area starts to wear on them. If you're seriously considering Willoughby, you could always do a test week. Drive your actual school routes at school start time and end times, and obviously not on a Sunday or a stat holiday, but on a busy weekday. The third thing is something you don't always notice on a quick visit, and that's how different each pocket of Willoughby actually feels like. One pocket of Willoughby can feel quiet and park-oriented. Kids biking, very little through traffic. A few blocks away might back onto a major route or a future development site with more noise and more commercial traffic. Because master planned communities are still being built, some families underestimate how long construction can last, or how much the feel of an area changes once empty lots become condos or townhomes. You might back onto a peaceful field for 2 years and then suddenly have 18 months of framing, dump trucks, and 7 a.m. beeping behind your fence. Just to clarify, it's not that one pocket is better than the other. It's that you want to know what you're buying into. Now, the last thing families underestimate is something more subtle, but it adds up over time, and it's the impact of density on daily stress. More homes per block means more cars, more parking pressure, and more people sharing the same roads and amenities. That can be fantastic for kids, lots of friends nearby, but it can also feel intense when you're juggling activities, homework, extracurricular activities, and work schedules. I often hear parents say, "We love how many kids are around, but we didn't realize how much the constant movement would drain us." So ask yourself, do I get more stress by traffic and noise, or more stress by being further away from things? Willoughby is best for families who prefer the busy and close over quieter and farther. Now, when a few of these factors start stacking up, that's when families begin to reassess. And that leads into something people don't always talk about, which is why some families choose to leave Willoughby after a few years. Some families love Willoughby, but they still leave after a few years. Usually it's not because they made a mistake, but it's because their life changed. Kids grow up, one car becomes 2, then 3, a 3-bedroom townhome that felt perfect with toddlers now feels tight with teenagers and friends coming over, or families simply start craving a different pace. Bigger yard, quieter streets, more separation. Some begin looking at places like Walnut Grove, Brookswood, or Murrayville for that shift. And the district is continuing to build and adjust schools to match growth here. That's great long term, but it also means the area will keep evolving. For some families, that energy is exciting, but for others, it signals that eventually they'll want something calmer. I think the healthiest way to think of Willoughby is as a chapter, not a permanent label of success or failure. For many families, this is the entry to homeownership in Langley. It's where their kids learn to ride bikes in townhouse lanes, the season where they live close to everything when life was busiest. Then later, they reassess and shift. Instead of asking, will this work for 20 years? Ask, is this the right fit for the next 5 to 10 years? And that should take a lot of pressure off. Now, all of that is lifestyle, but timing matters too. Right now, the Fraser Valley is still firmly in a buyer's market. In February 2026, the benchmark price for a typical Fraser Valley home was about $895,100, with a sales to active listings ratio around 10% and inventory sitting more than 50% above the 10-year seasonal average. In Langley, the overall benchmark price is just under $965,000. Detached homes are around $1.52 million, townhomes around $810,000, and condos around $553,000, with prices roughly 6 to 9% lower than a year ago depending on property type. So what does that mean for Willoughby? You're shopping in one of Langley's most in-demand, family-oriented neighborhoods, but in a market where buyers still hold more leverage than sellers. Inventory across Langley is elevated, and properties are taking longer to sell than in past spring markets, which means serious buyers in Willoughby have more choice, more room to negotiate on terms and price, and less pressure to compete in aggressive multiple offer situations than they did a year ago. Although the overall market still favors buyers, we are starting to see multiple offers in Willoughby on homes that are sharply priced, well presented, and in great locations, especially in the townhome and family-oriented strata segment. Remember the realities we talked about earlier about density, traffic, catchment changes, and construction? Well, these are also the reasons why Willoughby keeps getting new schools, new amenities, and new future transit investment. You're not just buying 4 walls here. You're buying into a neighborhood that was designed around families, where schools, parks, and housing have grown together. In Willoughby, there's a deep bench of newer homes with modern layouts and more energy-efficient construction than many older parts of the Lower Mainland. Kids can often walk to multiple schools, parks, and the Langley Event Center. On top of that, that, Willoughby is getting a major boost with the new Smith Athletic Park Youth Soccer Campus, which is roughly a $150 million multi-phase project that's already opened its first 3 synthetic fields and will add an indoor full-size training center and more facilities by around 2027, giving local families a high-end hub for practices, games, and tournaments just minutes from home. And the township and province are actively investing in new schools and community amenities to support long-term livability. So if Willoughby fits your 5 to 10 year chapter, busy kid years, lots of nearby friends, walkable amenities, well then this quieter 2026 market can actually be a strong window for you to step into that lifestyle with more negotiating powers and less competition. This is why neighborhood planning is just as important as price and square footage. Before you decide, ask yourself, how flexible am I with school changes? Do I get more anxious about traffic or driving further? And how comfortable am I living in an area that's constantly evolving? If you want, we can sit down together and map this out. Your kids' ages, likely school pathways, realistic drive times and routes, and which pockets of Willoughby or other Langley neighborhoods line up best with your priorities and tolerances. Book a time with me using the link in the description below, and I'd be happy to help you so that whatever chapter you choose, it feels intentional. Let's explore Langley, where learning meets living.